This week we got DC All-In Special #1, a new reader-friendly introduction to whatever this new DC universe is going to be, written by Scott Snyder, Josh Williamson, art by Daniel St. Pierre, as well as Wes Craig. You get an Alpha side from the perspective of Superman. That's the St. Pierre art. You get an Omega side from the perspective of Darkseid, and that's the Wes Craig art on this one. And I'm definitely in a thinking cynical kind of mood on this. And because there are some good things in the comic book, especially the art by, really by both writers. I think St. Pierre knocks it out of the park. Wes Craig does equally well, I guess, with the Darkseid stuff. But man, this comic book does feel like been there, done that, squared the comic book. Like it's the exact same thing we got basically for Rebirth. We're almost the exact same thing. It's like the exact same thing we got from Josh Williamson and like the Infinite Frontier type of thing. There's lots of call-outs and callbacks to stuff that DC have done very, 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 very poorly over the last 5 to 10 years. There are lots of callbacks to New 52. The Omega story starts 52 days before Absolute Power, I think. And then the Alpha story starts 52 days after, like, Absolute Power. There are callbacks to Nightmares. There are callbacks to Dark Knight's Death Metal. Like, there are callbacks to so many things that have been truly unsuccessful over the past 5 to 10 years from DC Comics that really drove people away. And I don't think letting people know this is the time to jump in by reminding them of why they jumped out to begin with is the right strategy. Also, the ideas going on, especially with the Justice League, are definitely things that we've seen from better writers than Scott Snyder or Josh Williamson, to be completely honest with you. It definitely feels like going through the motions. That's the best way that I can describe DC All-In Special #1. It's a flick book. Obviously, I read it in digital, but if you got it, you either read the Alpha issue, it ends in the middle, and then you flip it, and then you read the Omega issue, and it also ends in the middle. They end at the exact same spot because it's really clever like that. I guess that's one of the gimmicks that they're doing with this book. The one thing that I will give them that is an absolute A+ on this book is the price. They did not try to gouge you. They did not try to bend you over for a book that's supposed to be getting you excited to get back into DC Comics. But I will say this flat out. If the purpose of DC All-In Special is to get you excited to read DC Comics after this, I think it fails. If the purpose of the book is to reestablish the Justice League, it succeeds. That happens. If the purpose is to make the Justice League seem more important and bigger than they were before, I would say they failed. If the purpose is to make Darkseid seem more interesting and more of a bigger threat than he was before, I would say they also fail on that right. Let's get into this comic book and talk about some of the specifics. There's definitely going to be plenty of spoilers in this. So if you don't want spoilers, you can walk away now and you will be fine. The first thing that happens 52 days after Absolute Power, the Justice League are back in action again. And we know that we're getting a Justice League Unlimited series from Mark Waid, which I will not read because of Mark Waid, but with art from Dan Moore. This concept for the Justice League is so heavily reminiscent of the Jonathan Hickman Avengers era, where every single hero basically was an Avenger, and then they all work together to create like an Avenger machine. We've basically got the formation of the Justice League machine in this comic book from Scott Snyder and Josh Williamson. Not exactly an original concept, not even trying to do anything original with the way that they even constructed and explained how they work together. And I will not be surprised within the next 12 months when it happens that we get a Secret Avengers-like series to where a smaller group, like a cabal of the Justice League, have their own book for the actual Justice League itself. I do not like the concept of this Justice League. In fact, I dislike it to a great degree. When everyone's a Justice League member, being a member of the Justice League basically means nothing. They've watered down the entire concept, but they've incorporated technology and magic and mysticism and cold power and cold fusion and nuclear power all into these new Justice League membership cards that they're handing out. And basically it's all from Superman's point of view. So the reformation of the Justice League happens. I hate what the Justice League has become already before we even got into the series, which I'm not going to read because it is written by Mark Waid. And quite frankly, fuck that guy. As they're doing this, they're having their first Justice League meeting with every single hero in the DC Comics universe at the newly constructed Watchtower. The Spectre all of a sudden is taken over by Darkseid. Darkseid and the Spectre merge. And you've got Omega beams, and you've got magical people's eyes turning red, and they're shooting Omega beams. And Darkseid's like, finally, and he's trying to kill all the Justice League members and all that stuff. But it's not quite what it appears to be. In fact, this is like a suicide by cop moment for Darkseid. He actually wants to die. And he's basically given the Justice League a reason to do it, because now they have to remove the Spectre from Darkseid to be able to stop him. So they have to imbue Superman with some type of magic to separate them, and then he punches him. His essence goes into like a blank Justice League membership card. I'm not lying there at all. That really happens. And they're like, oh my God, I think we killed Darkseid. Except now there's like a rift in time and space. There's some interesting stuff happening with the Darkseid on the Alpha side, with the art specifically. At one point, like, whatever Darkseid has created, like, starts bleeding through the page, and you're seeing glimpses of it, like, in between the panels and stuff. So I thought that was cool and kind of creative by Daniel St. Pierre, the way that he was able to incorporate that. And then we go back to Dark Knight's death metal. And I definitely get the feeling about this new status quo and where they're going. Scott Snyder was like, well, I had a plan, or thoughts of a plan, after Dark Knight's death metal. New Omniverse, and we had an Elseworld, and a this and a that. And it was kind of all dropped when I decided not to work for DC anymore. I'd kind of like to do that again, even though it led to nothing in the first place. So he goes back, and you've got Mr. Terrific explaining that now there's no Omniverse. Now there's only a multiverse, but we're cut off from it because of whatever Amanda Waller did in Absolute Power. That the center of this is now what we called originally the Elseworld is now the Alpha World. And the Alpha World has weird vibrations, and they're chaotic. Therefore, this must be a chaotic universe. And the only person that would be able to transfer or go through this portal, this fissure that's been opened between space and time in their universe to this other Alpha World or Elseworld or Darkseid universe or Absolute universe, where the fuck you want to call it, because they've got 5 names for it now, is you would have to have like tachyon particles or tachyon something. And they're like, well, we got one time traveler, so it must be Booster Gold. So they decide to send Booster Gold through the other side to do a fact-finding mission. He's just going to go there for 10 minutes, and then they're going to use Skeets to bring him back. Nobody in the world should be more happy about DC All-In Special #1 than Booster Gold fans. He is brought to the forefront. If Superman is the star of the book, Booster Gold is essentially the co-star. Or maybe the third star, because, you know, Darkseid does star in the second half of the book. But Booster Gold is definitely the #3 character in all of this stuff. I think they have made Booster Gold an absolute joke for far too long to try and make him a central focal point of anything. It's very hard to take the character seriously, but he was starting to feel out of place considering going back in time. But now that he's got his Justice League membership card, he's just going to go travel over to the new Omegaverse, Alphaverse, Elseworld, Absolute Universe, or whatever it is. And he's like, oh no, there are Omega symbols, which obviously symbolize Darkseid everywhere, and it's immediately cut off, and it appears that he's stuck there. So he's not going to be able to report back to him. And that's basically what gets you to this big splash page that's right side up and upside down and left side right and right side left with Omega symbols on all these different characters, because everyone needs an Omega symbol. And it says to be continued in the DC universe, and then to be continued in Absolute Universe. You flip the sumbitch over. Now we're going to the Darkseid story, or Omega, which I personally found less enjoyable. I do think the art by Wes Craig kind of fits what they're doing. And it's all about how can we make Darkseid more evil or more central focus to this, or elevate the character, which I don't think you can elevate Darkseid, because Darkseid is. Now, as far as the new reader-friendly aspect of it that Scott Snyder promised, I would say Alpha, for the most part, is new reader-friendly. When you get to this Darkseid story, absolutely not. There are so many callbacks to Final Crisis and other events going on. You get references to so many different events and creators from the past that this is absolutely not reader-friendly. But it is all about Darkseid being hungry. And what happened is When Amanda Waller shut down access to the multiverses, Darkseid felt that, and he felt this jolt of energy, and he didn't know what it was, but he realized he needed to get to the bottom of it, and he needed to go out and find somebody, and nobody wants him to find this, including the members of his family on the fourth world. So he starts like wiping out Kalibak and all these other characters as he's wiping them through, because he's on this mission, because he has created like a wish machine. I think it's a miracle machine, but it's a wish machine. Basically, it's a one-shot genie lamp that once it gets turned on, he can get a wish, and he needs to know the answer to why he felt that sudden jolt of energy when the multiverses were shut down. He doesn't know that's why he felt it. And as I said, this happened, I guess, 52 days before. Absolute power. 52 days before something. It says 52 days earlier. Maybe it meant the day that he stormed the Watchtower. I don't fucking care, to be completely honest. But as he's going along, all these entities are trying to stop Darkseid because they can see what he's doing is very, very bad. So you've got the Quintessence, you've got Eclipso, other characters are standing in the way of Darkseid, wanting to stop him. He even goes to heaven and hell trying to search for the answers and how he can get to the bottom of whatever happened to him, to the point where some of his greatest enemies or other villains that would not necessarily be aligned with him decide to acquiesce to him, to what has typically motivated the character of Darkseid. In fact, one of them is like, listen, if you stop what you're doing right now, I will guarantee pain upon all of your enemies. Everyone that you've ever hated will just be in constant agony. He's like, no, that's not what I want, because the typical motivations in history of Darkseid no longer apply. Then they're like, listen, if you stop, I will bring her back. Your long lost, dead wife, we will bring her back into reality. You can live with her again, and you can finally be with her, which you thought you'd never do, but I will give that to you if you give up this quest that you're on. And he's like, no, I need to know why I felt that jolt of power. And it all leads to, as you can imagine, the Spectre, Jim Corrigan. He's got him like in a dungeon or whatever, and he wants to connect with the Spectre because the Spectre will be the only entity that will be able to tell him exactly why he felt what he felt and why he feels like he's missing. And because he's got a wish machine or a miracle machine, whatever you want to call it, going back to, I think it's Grant Morrison, the Spectre explains to Darkseid that in the multiverse, Darkseid is essential to everything, that there's a little bit of Darkseid energy that goes to any newly created multiverse. And as that happens, over the years, Darkseid has become less powerful. He's become less than what he originally was, and he didn't even know it because he couldn't really feel it as that was happening. And he is there to keep the world in balance. As long as there's some Darkseid energy, there's a reason for heroes to step to the forefront and exist. He's integral to the balance of the entire, I guess at the time, omniverse. Now I think it's just a multiverse. I don't think the omniverse exists anymore. And the Spectre tells him, when Amanda Waller shut down access to all the multiverses, all of your energy came back at once. And as long as you're part of the machine, the worlds are in balance and good and evil are able to exist at the same time. So you are a singular, important entity throughout the entire multiverse. There's a reason there's only one Darkseid, because you are the key to everything remaining in balance. And now Darkseid's like, fuck that. I don't want to be a cog in your stupid machine. I want to not have to be here and be integral to keeping the balance in the universe. I need to go make my own world. And that's where he gets himself killed by the Justice League. So he could create his own universe. And then we get some previews of the Absolute Universe with Wonder Woman, then Batman, and I believe Superman. The most disappointing part of this stuff is all the stupid things that Scott Snyder and Jason Aaron and Kelly Thompson have been saying for like weeks now, mostly Scott Snyder, are all said in here verbatim as if he had a fucking script when he was talking about why these characters are cool or why you should think it was interesting or something like that. There's also some really weird discrepancies. I've read Absolute Batman #1. I don't remember seeing a fucking single Omega symbol in that universe. But when you read this, it's everywhere because he's in control of everything and everyone's aware of it. I don't think that's how it's working, but that's the way it's presented in here. And let me ask you if you've heard this one before. A villain gets tired of working with the heroes, doesn't want to have to deal with them anymore, shuts down everything and recreates a universe in his own image. Does that not sound exactly like Jonathan Hickman's recent fucking Ultimate Universe reboot? There's so much copy and paste going on in this comic book that you can't help but be like, maybe there's no stories left to tell. Or maybe Scott Snyder's just too big of a fan of Jonathan Hickman to where he accidentally let it seep into whatever story that he's trying to tell here. I don't know. This did not feel big to me at all. Did it feel big to you? Like, I wasn't like, whoa, everything has changed. This is the moment where you got to read all the DC books because everything's important now. They've really shook up the status quo of the universe, and this is awesome. Or I don't even feel like this. Well, I don't like the DC universe anymore, but now we're going to have a smaller shared continuity in the Absolute universe. I should go over there to avoid having to invest in all this stuff because it's smaller and it's more contained. No, because it's clearly implied throughout this entire fucking comic book that is going to affect the other one too. So you have to read two universes now. They've missed the entire fucking point of all this. I'm like, am I taking crazy pills? Do I need to bring out Bad Boy West and put somebody on fraud watch? I don't know what's going on here, but I know it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't good either. And that's a problem because this is the most important comic book DC has produced since DC Rebirth #1. This is their chance to get people talking about DC comics again, and to say that it's ho-hum or it's whelming isn't exactly the way you want people to feel walking away from. And I'm sure there are people out there that are like, whoa, my mind is blown. And I think there are other people that are going to be more like, man, that really does suck. You know, there are a lot of stupid moments in there, but I think most people are going to be in my boat where like, this kind of feels familiar. Scott Snyder's done this before. This is his third or fourth attempt to do this, and I should be more excited than this because I'm not. It's a weird feeling. I assume that DC All In Special was going to make me feel at least the way that DC Rebirth did, where, oh my goodness, this is what I wanted. Or not, even if it's not what I wanted, this makes sense. I don't like the new State of the Justice League. I don't like the fact that they killed off Darkseid so he can make a world in his own image because he was that important. I don't like that they're making the Avengers machine over again. I don't like all the callbacks to 52 and New 52 and Nightmares and Dark Crisis on Infinite Earth and Lazarus Planet and Absolute Power. What other fucking Future State? All the stupid bullshit that we've been going through is all tied in and mentioned in this comic book. I'm like, God bless you for not just restarting everything with a crisis-like event, but you could at least go, you know what? That stuff didn't work. Let's not bring it up and remind people why they fucking stopped reading to begin with. So in many ways, besides reestablishing the Justice League, I think this book, while not being bad, fails on essentially all accounts. I don't think it successfully achieves its goal on almost anything. I don't think people are going to be like, oh my goodness, you need to read my copy of DC All In Special #1, because once you do, you're going to go to your shop, you're going to want your own copy, and you're going to be waiting for next week when it finally starts in earnest. I don't think anybody feels like that. They're just kind of like, oh, this is a flip book, got a little bit gimmick to it, and it's all the same beats. It's the same thing that we've been experiencing over and over again. Maybe they needed new voices. You know, Scott Snyder has had his time at DC. Josh Williamson has been the focal point for years at this point. Maybe they needed to go and find people that had a different interpretation of what would be good for DC Comics, because Dark Knight's Metal, Dark Knight's Death Metal, Justice League No More, No Justice, whatever that thing was, you know, all the weird, Dark Multiverse, all the stuff that Snyder did, I don't think it resonates anymore, and he's just doing more of that. So that's my 2 cents. If you do appreciate what I'm doing here on Think Critical YouTube, and you would like to support me in our mission to provide some levity, some real, honest critiques of the comic book industry and how things are going, I do invite you to come visit me on Think Critical Patreon. There's a link in the video description. You support me there. You throw a little money my way. Let's be honest about that one. You get lots of awesome podcasts talking about this and other things with Aaron Sparrow, Jim, Doc. You get all the audio files of every YouTube video I make as well. You get exclusive video, stuff like that. Hope to see you there very soon.